Hi, welcome to Unit 3 for PE 551. Today's presentation will be on a review of chapters 4 and 5 of your textbook. Then we will also be discussing the California Physical Education Model Content Standards as well as the NASPE Physical Education Model Content Standards. This slide has an example of exceptional physical education teachers as well as coaches. Click on both links. The top link is for the 2011 National Physical Education Teacher of the Year. The bottom link, which is in red, is for John Wooden, who's a coach for UCLA for many years, very famous gentleman, and he talks about how he had created his own definition of success. Both of them are very interesting watches. Link to both, watch both in their entirety, and then we will be reflecting on them together in our forums. So try to pick out the key components that both of them feel makes an exceptional physical education teacher as well as an exceptional coach. Multi-use assessments, the ones that are listed to the right, can be used as either a formative assessment or a summative assessment when used correctly. That also means that multi-use assessments can help in determining grades for the physical education student. You'll notice that the multi-use assessments are listed, starting with journals all the way down to response to provide information questions. The numbers listed to the right are the NASPE standards that these forms of assessments can be used to assess. Journals are an assessment that provides students opportunities to reflect and write on events or topics in the class. Portfolios are collections of artifacts that typically are used to show students competency or mastery of a subject area. So therefore, a journal can be part of a portfolio. Projects are assessments that require students to create something that demonstrates their knowledge of a topic. As we go through these assessments, go back and think about the 4 C's for the Common Core: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Do you see how these assessments relate to the Common Core standards? Let's move on to gameplay. Gameplay is usually part of a sport unit and can easily be an assessment tool for teachers when an appropriate rubric is written to assess it. Psychomotor skills, cognitive knowledge, rules and strategies, cooperation and teamwork, and safety can all be assessed during gameplay. Event tasks are performance tasks that can be completed within a single class period. An event task could be used to evaluate every standard depending on the task and the accompanying rubric. So this event task can be used to assess NASPE standards 1 through 6. Essays are a performance assessment representative of what someone in the field would do, such as writing a dialogue, creating a brochure, or writing an article to demonstrate knowledge of a topic. So again, this would relate to NASPE Standard 2, encompassing critical thinking. Open response questions present problems and then require students to respond. The students' responses typically begin with, "It depends." So we're looking at, again, critical thinking. Single dimension questions are fairly simple to write and usually take the students between 10 to 15 minutes to respond per prompt. One response questions that usually require students to evaluate information, draw conclusions, and then justify their response. Again, critical thinking. So here is our example from our book on page 101 for an example of a single dimension question. You are a coach of a team participating in a sport education unit. A key game is being played today, and your best player has not been working very hard during practice. You must decide whether to allow the player to participate or punish the poor practice behavior by having him or her sit on the bench. Decide what you're going to do and give your reasoning for that discussion. This question can encompass the 4 C's of Common Core by incorporating communication, collaboration between peers, critical thinking, as well as creativity. You could have the students respond to this individually or have them get together as a group and have them come up with a summative answer. This would incorporate and encourage collaboration and communication between their peers, and then coming up with a creative way to respond as a collective whole. Response provide information questions. Provide a prompt and ask the students to respond in some way to that prompt. Open response questions that provide information to which a student must respond is the definitions for response to provide information questions. The final is student logs. Logs are lists of activities or practice trials completed by the students. Student logs document outside participation in physical activity. Quantitative and qualitative rubrics are used throughout the physical education programs, including the Masters of Physical Education program that you are in right now. All of the rubrics that you are scored on for each respective assignment are written in the qualitative rubric form. There is a verbal description for each of the various levels for which you have achieved. Our rubrics are in a 1 through 4 format with a verbal description of what a 1 means, a 2, a 3, or a 4, and then a verbal description for each of the criteria. If you look at the quantitative rubric, which is found on page 107 of your textbook, figure 4.3, you'll notice that the criteria is listed in language terms, and then the person is scored numerically, 0 through 3. However, a 0 means never, a 1 would mean some of the time, a 2 would mean about half of the time, and 3 would mean most of the time. If there were no numbers associated with the verbal descriptions, then it would be a qualitative rubric. A numeric advice, a way that I The NASPE standards have a goal, and the goal is to create a physical education program that develops physically literate individuals who have the knowledge, skills, and confidence to enjoy a lifetime of healthful physical activity. To pursue a lifetime of healthful physical activity, a physically literate individual, now remember we changed the term from a physically educated individual to a physically literate individual. The person has learned the skills necessary to participate in a variety of physical activities, knows the implications of and the benefits from involvement in various types of physical activities, participates in regular physical activity, so frequent, is physically fit, and values physical activity and its contributions to a healthy lifestyle. The 5 physical education related NASPE standards are Standard 1 through 5. Standard 1, the physically literate individual demonstrates competency in a variety of motor skills and movement patterns. Standard 2, the physically literate individual applies knowledge of concepts, principles, strategies, and tactics related to movement and performance. Standard 3. The physically literate individual demonstrates the knowledge and skills to achieve and maintain a health-enhancing level of physical activity and fitness. Standard 4. The physically literate individual exhibits responsible behavior and social behavior that respects self and others. Standard 5. The physically literate individual recognizes the value of physical activity for health, enjoyment, challenge, self-expression, and/or social interaction. Regardless of your educational route, if you are a physical education teacher, an adapted physical education teacher, a coach, or a sports management major, the NASPE standards are all relevant to your specific discipline. We are all trying to create physically literate individuals. Now I want you to visit the NASPE website. The link is on the prior webpage or the prior PowerPoint slide. Once you click on that link, On the left-hand side, it will say Standards and Position Statements. If you click on National Standards, a drop-down box will come down with 3 choices. It will say Physical Education Teacher Education, or Sport Coaches. Please click on both the Physical Education, which is at the top, and then navigate through Sport Coaches and see what both pages have to offer information-wise. For Sport Coaches, we are going to be visiting the Quality Coaches, Quality Sports, and National Standards for Sport Coaches, the 2nd edition. There are 8 domains of coaching competencies that relate directly to the NASPE standards. Coaches, coaching educators, administrators, athletes, and the public use the national standards for sport coaches for direction regarding the skills and knowledge the coaches should possess. So as we go through these, think about which of these skills you possess. Improve the quality of your program instruction. Use the national standards for sport coaches to provide quality training that will have a positive impact on coaches' performance. Establish benchmarks for hiring quality coaches. This is very important and specific information for those that are sports management majors, as well as our athletic directors, athletic trainers, and head coaches. This also provides a performance guide for individual professional growth and skill development. The 40 NASPE standards specifically for coaching competency are broken into 8 domains. Those domains are philosophy and ethics, safety and injury prevention, physical conditioning, growth and development, teaching and communication, sport and skills and tactics, organization and administration, and evaluation. The link provided to you in this slide will take you directly to the page on the NASPE, AFERD.org website, but the NASPE page that goes into detail the coaching standards and benchmarks. For example, domain philosophy and ethics. Standard 1 relates to domain 1. Standard 1 is to develop and implement an athlete-centered coaching philosophy. A well-developed coaching philosophy provides expectations for behaviors that reflect priorities and values of the coach. An appropriate coaching perspective focuses on maximizing the positive benefits of sport participation for each athlete. The benchmarks for meeting Standard 1 are identify and communicate reasons for entering the coaching profession. Develop an athlete-centered coaching philosophy that aligns with an organization's mission and goals. Communicate the athlete-centered coaching philosophy in verbal and written form for athletes, parents, guardians, and program staff. Welcome all eligible athletes and implement strategies that encourage the participation of disadvantaged and disabled students. Manage athlete behavior consistent with an athlete-centered coach philosophy. This is relevant information to physical educators, coaches, as well as our sports management majors, especially to communicate the athlete-centered coaching philosophy in verbal written form to athletes, parents, guardians, and program staff. Also making sure that the coaching philosophy aligns with the organization's missions and goals statements. For you sports management majors, you would be responsible in your future careers to be creating organizational mission and goal statements. You then would want to make sure that your coaches align with these set standards. Domain 3, physical conditioning, states it relates to Standard 13 for coaching. Teach and encourage proper nutrition for optimal physical and mental performance and overall good health. The coach must understand and teach appropriate nutrition and weight management practices. Counseling athletes about healthy eating is an important part of preparing athletes for sport performance. Proper nutrition and hydration are necessary to fuel the body, and then it is broken up into the respective benchmarks. Now we will be speaking exclusively about the California Physical Education Model Content Standards. Again, if you are from out of state, you are welcome to refer back to your personal state's PE standards when creating your curriculum doing your case study. To find your state's physical education content standards, you can refer back to the aford.org website, the NASPE standards website, which I have given you the link for. On the left, you'll see a link for national standards. If you click on that, there will be a drop-down box by state. You just have to do the drop-down box to your personal states. Click on that, and then the standards for your state will show up. By now, you should have read the Introduction to the California Physical Education Model Content Standards, as well as be familiar with the 5 overarching standards for elementary and middle school, and then the 3 overarching standards for high school. Also, during session 1, you were required to go through the California Physical Education Model Content Standards just to familiarize yourself with the document. Also, as stated in Unit 1, a review for California law as it pertains to mandated physical education minutes states that the California law clearly established the priority of physical education instruction. Ed Code Section 51210 requires 200 minutes of physical education every 10 days for students in grades 1 through 6. Ed Code Section 51222 provides for 400 minutes of physical education every 10 days for students in grades 7 through 12. This is a minimum mandate. Teachers can choose to implement or meet these minutes how they choose to. It does not necessarily mean that they have, so for instance, if you have 200 minutes every 10 days at the elementary level, it does not mean that they have to do 20 minutes every day for 10 days. They could do their physical education in larger chunks to meet those 10 days. Regardless, there is a minimum requirement, and teachers do have to meet this minimum requirement. Otherwise, the district can be fined. In elementary schools, the content standards emphasize the way in which students move through space and time in their environment, the way in which the student and the partner move in space together, the continuity and change in movements, the manipulation of objects in time and through space, and the manipulation of objects with accuracy and speed. You'll notice that the 5 overarching standards are related significantly to the 5 NASPE standards. However, the 5 overarching standards for California PE model content standards are just that, overarching. Within each standard for each grade level, there are subcategories. For instance, kindergarten standard 1, which states that students demonstrate the motor skills and movement patterns needed to perform a variety of movement activities, is then broken down into movement concepts, body management, locomotor movement, manipulative skills, and rhythmical skills. Standard 2 is broken up the same way: movement concepts, body management, locomotor movement, and manipulative skills. Then, under each breakdown, there are benchmarks within each of those. So let's go again back to kindergarten. Standard 1, I'm looking at movement concepts. Standard 1.1. Travel within a large group without bumping into others or falling while using locomotor skills. So now let's go look at the same standard. Let's go look at Standard 1, Movement Concepts, specifically Standard 1.1 for first grade. I'm scanning down. I'm going to first grade. First grade, Standard 1, Movement Concepts 1.1. So this is where the progression comes in of skills. So in kindergarten, we already talked about what they're supposed to do at this level for movement skills. In first grade, the student should be able to demonstrate an awareness of personal space, general space, and boundaries while moving in different directions at high, medium, and low levels in space. So it's the same standard, but a progression. So as we move along in grade levels, you'll see an increase in difficulty. So let's keep going. Let's go now to grade level 2, standard 1, standard 1.1. Again, movement concepts. It states, move to open spaces within boundaries while traveling at increasing rates of speed. So this gives you an idea of how the skills that are embedded within the standards are set up in a scope and sequence format. Let's address another skill. And all of the coaches as well as sports management majors should be thinking about a specific sport that you are coaching or hoping to be an industry leader of, and how you can apply these standards specifically to the sports skill that you or sport that you are teaching. So let's look at kindergarten. Let's go to standard 2. Body management. Let's look at the body management category, 2.3 for standard 2. Identify and describe parts of the body: head, shoulders, neck, back, chest, waist, hips, arms, elbows, wrists, hands, fingers, legs, knees, ankles, feet, and toes. You have to make sure that your students understand what these body Part 2. You have to make sure that your students and your athletes understand a foundational knowledge and make sure that they understand what body parts they're supposed to be using and what those body parts are called. Most of you coaches are going to be at the high school to college levels, but sometimes you're going to be coaching maybe from very young ages, from preschool all the way through college if you start to work for a sporting agency, or your sports management majors out there will need to make sure that the coaches that you hire have an in-depth understanding of the progression of skills that are expected for individuals. You can also make sure that, or you can also know now, that if you are having difficulty with an athlete of yours that is perhaps falling behind the curve or not quite grasping a concept or a skill that you are trying to teach them or coach to them, you can refer back to the California PE model content and see the correct progression of the skill in which you are trying to get them to achieve. The high school experience represents the culmination of physical education. From kindergarten through 5th grade, the content is delivered incrementally to best enable student learning at the appropriate developmental level. In 6th through 8th grade, the content is consolidated and student skills are refined, representing a natural progression of skill sophistication. When students reach 9th grade, they are ready to integrate all they know with all they can do. They become capable of higher order thinking and of more skilled performance. Therefore, the 5 elementary and middle school model standards have been combined into the 3 high school model content standards noted here on this screen. To fulfill the requirement for high school graduation, students must take 2 years of physical education in high school. However, if they do not pass 5 out of the 6 components of the fitnessgram that they have taken in grades 5, 7, and 9, they will not be allowed to move on from physical education. That is where high school courses 3 and 4 come into play. If a physical education student, again, has not passed 5 out of the 6 components of the fitnessgram, they must continue to take physical education. And they must continue to take physical education until they pass 5 of the 6 components. The 3 overarching standards, such as Standard 1, states that students demonstrate knowledge of and competency in motor skills, movement patterns, and strategies needed to perform a variety of physical activities. This is broken down, so Standard 1 in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. You will see the progression of skills throughout each grade level. So for instance, in grade 9, Standard 1, let's look at that. Standard 1.1, combine and apply movement skills, simple to complex, in aquatic, rhythms and dance, and individual and dual activities. So there is Standard 1 for grade 9. Now let's look at Standard 1.1 for grade high school course 2. Standard 1, 1.1, combine and apply movement patterns from simple to complex in combative, gymnastics, tumbling, and team activities. So you can see the progression in skills there. So for coaches and management majors, these are the courses 1, 2, 3, and 4 are really the skill sets that you would probably be focusing more on, since typically the coaches that take these courses are more at the high school to collegiate level. However, it is still imperative that you remember the skill progression starting from kindergarten. Also, as you go through these skills, it is important to remember that traditional sport is mentioned nowhere in the California PE model content standards. You will see some specifics such as rhythm and dance, or gymnastics or aquatics, but you will not see anything that's mentioned specifically dance class or specifically soccer, baseball. The sport unit is just a way that we can get our students or our athletes to be able to meet all of these standards. And if the sport is being used as PE credits, the sport is still expected to meet all the physical education model content standards for the grade level that that student is in. Now take some time to review the California PE model content standards. Let's look at the skill progressions starting from kindergarten through 12th grade. You will be happy that you did. This also is one of your assignments within your forums for this week. So what I would suggest doing is starting at kindergarten, looking at Standard 1, and then look at movement concepts. So for example, movement concepts in kindergarten is 1.1 through 1.4. So I'm going to look at all of those. I know 1.1 is travel within a large group without bumping into others or falling while using locomotor skills. 1.2 is travel forward and sidewise while changing direction quickly in response to a signal. 1.3 is demonstrate contrast between slow and fast speeds while using locomotor skills. 1.4 is create shapes at high, medium, and low levels by using hands, arms, torso, feet, and legs in a variety of combinations. So that's kindergarten standard 1 on 1.1 through 1.4 specifically for movement concepts. Now I'm going to keep those in my mind. Now I'm going to go look at grade 1 and think about the progression of that skill. So movement concepts 1.1 through 1.5 for grade level 1, and I'm going to compare crossing over. So 1.1 from kindergarten, now I can see that the student is starting to advance in first grade. Now they have to, for 1.1, demonstrate an awareness of personal space, general space, and boundaries while moving in different directions. So now they've incorporated high, medium, and low levels in space. I'm going to go ahead and jump forward a couple grade levels just to see a significant increase in ability level. Now I'm going to look at grade 3 movement concepts. Now they've started to combine more of the skills to create a more complex skill. So now in grade level 3 for movement concepts, there's only one standard there, 1.1. Chase, flee, and move away from others in a constantly changing environment. So now in grade level 3, the student has advanced, so they've taken all of the skills from kindergarten to first grade to second grade to have this more of a culminating activity, like I said, which is to chase, flee, and move away from others in a constantly changing environment. But if we task analyze and really break down the skill, All of these subsequent skills that the student learns in grades kindergarten, first, and second is what you need now to be able to accomplish the standard that is set for Standard 3, 1.1.